This is episode 103 of The Place of Sound, and I'm your host, Katerina Kalinowska. For those of you who are listening to us for the first time, The Place of Sound is a show that explores the themes of space and place using sound and listening. This is done through a variety of audio media production formats, so you can expect to do a few different types of listening in a single show. Episodes consist of what we refer to as audio portraits or oral history-style interviews that explore topic of home, soundscape compositions which use everyday sounds to communicate the personal and social significance of a given place, and we typically end the episode with a short documentary-style piece that explores the place-based identity of the producer. The aim with these projects is to allow the producer to think about the places that made them who they are today. These are the types of projects you can expect to hear on The Place of Sound, and all of them are produced by students here at Carleton University. They're what gets produced in COMS 4501 Digital Media Production, which is a fourth-year workshop course in the Communication and Media Studies program. All right, love is in the air. We're just past Valentine's Day, and whether you celebrated in a big way, kept it quiet, or treated it like any other weekend, I hope you had a moment that felt warm, restful, or at least a little lighter. The timing actually fits today's episode, because in a way, this is an episode about love too, just not the obvious kind. It's about the love that shows up through community, through care, through the places we fight to hold on to, and the system we depend on when the life gets complicated. This is the third and final installment in our 2025 retrospective series, and today we're focusing on audio documentaries. These are some of the most layered projects we air on The Place of Sound. They're longer form, they're built through narration, interviews, environmental sound, and research, and they aim to tell a complete story with a clear arc. You'll hear two documentaries in this episode. They're very different in setting, but they share a common question. What does it actually take to build a life that feels stable, supported, and sustainable? First is The Heart of the City by Harris Blake Widdicombe. It's a documentary that centers on a 112-year-old building in Centertown and the co-op community that kept it alive. It's a portrait of housing as something more than shelter, something shaped by collective effort, history, and belonging. Then we'll hear Dunrobin Dreams, the reality of rural retirement by Rosemarie Robillard. It follows one retiree's move just outside Ottawa, beginning with the promise of quiet and space, and then unfolding into the realities of rural living. Flooding, water concerns, rising costs, and the way support systems don't always extend as far as they need to. So that's where we're headed today. Two documentaries, two different ideas of home, and two grounded portraits of what care can look like in practice. Let's begin with Heart of the City by Harris Blake Widdicombe. Over to you, Harris.
My name is Harris Blake Widdicombe, and I'm a fourth-year student of Communication and Media Studies at Carleton University. I live in a 112-year-old apartment building named the Shefford Heritage Housing Cooperative, and it's a beautiful old building, and I have lived here for about 10 years, and it means a lot to me. And this audio documentary is a love letter to my home and my community, and it's called The Heart of the City. In the heart of Ottawa, the neighborhood of Centertown is home to some 25,000 people, including me. It's walkable and beautiful and sometimes ugly and progressive and diverse. And when you walk down my street, you'll see rundown halfway houses literally right next to brand new condos and then the best sushi spot in town. Many of the buildings in Centertown are very old, sometimes more than a century, and some of them have names, the Duncannon, the Windsor Arms, the Strathcona, and the Shefford, where I live. It was built in 1912, the same year as the Chateau Laurier was built, and the same year as the sinking of the Titanic. It has seen 2 world wars and 2 pandemics.
It was one of Ottawa's first apartment buildings. And at one point, it was a really shishi place to be. Like, there was a doctor's office on the ground floor, and dumbwaiters were used. There might have been a kitchen in the basement. And it's been used as a site for to stand in for New York in movies, both the outside and the inside. It's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
It really is an elegant old building.
Marika Morris and Lee Harris have lived at the Shefford for over 30 years.
But in the 1980s, there was a landlord who wasn't taking care of the building. And by the early 90s, they wanted to sell the building. And it was really run down by then. Like, there were bugs and there were rats in the basement and whatever.
The most unsanitary surface you could ever imagine. I mean, I think the one that I moved into had like sand, almost like a sandpaper surface or something. It was gross. They didn't put any money in the building, and it was falling apart.
After 75 years, the Shefford was dying, but the tenants of the rundown building took matters into their own hands.
But we had a number of people who just loved the building and didn't want to see it destroyed, and they didn't want to be kicked out. So there was a tenants association that had formed to deal with the landlord who wasn't doing anything about the maintenance. So it was that tenant association that became the founding board of the co-op.
When this place became a co-op, I didn't even know what a co-op was. There was a core group of very, very dedicated people that spent, in fact, some of them got so burned out by the time it became a co-op that they moved away. They had been sort of destroyed by the process.
Founding the co-op was just the beginning. The Shefford Apartments became the Shefford Housing Cooperative, and eventually the Shefford Heritage Housing Co-op.
This old dilapidated building that we took over needed unbelievable amounts of reconstruction, and I think if they had gotten reputable people to do it, they probably couldn't have afforded to do it. So it was pretty much a nightmare. The first part of it, construction, ripping up walls, like just plaster everywhere.
The windows were all replaced, and there were like bats flying around inside because they just didn't put another window there right away. They ripped out all of the old radiators, so there were holes in the floor. Like, you could talk to your neighbor, say hello, and make eye contact with your neighbor downstairs, which was really awkward, especially in the bathroom, but also like bedrooms. And that, there were holes in the floor for months, before they fixed it and replaced it. So people really, I think there was a bit of trauma bonding at that time. Everyone in the building, like, they had all been tenants, and they were interviewed to see if they wanted to become co-op members, and all but one said yes.
I remember seeing a bottom kitchen cupboard moving a little bit, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. What's going on there? And then I figured, okay, it's a mouse or something. And I kind of stamped my foot or whatever. And at that moment, the cupboard door banged open, and then this bat shot out of the thing and flew about, 2 how bats fly erratically like that, right? Like, first it's coming right at me, and then it veered at the last second. And holy shit, I ran out of there.
We went through a lot collectively to become a co-op. In the early days, I would say that about a third of the co-op was made up of young gay men. And there were a number of people who worked on Parliament Hill who lived here. And they were it was mainly young people in this building, except for 2 households, which were elderly people. And now it's changed in terms of now it's mainly older people. When I first moved in here in 1992, it really was market rent. Like the rent was the same as any place you would get in Centertown. But now there's a huge difference because private landlords have jacked up their rents. So now there's about $1,000 difference between the market rent at the Shefford and market rent just, across the street.
Cooperative living has its challenges, and it's not for everyone. But it is a great way to help control the cost of living, and there are many different kinds of co-op.
It started in the mid-1800s in northern England, and it was like a consumer co-op, and it was in some mining town in northern England where they had to go to the company store, and they were fed up with the company owning them, owning their whole lives at work, after work. And so they started like a co-op so that they could meet their own needs. And it became a really popular idea. And now, Quebec has a lot of co-ops. They have funeral co-ops. I think there's one in Ottawa now. All kinds of co-ops, like the Mountain Equipment Co-op, You can become a member and then you get a vote. So now there are also co-ops around the world. And that it's seen as a good way to empower people, especially in developing countries and rural areas.
The Shefford is my home, and some of the best moments of my life have happened in this place. I became an uncle in this place. And in the process of making this documentary, I realized I wasn't just doing a school project. I was also writing a love letter to my home and my community. And this is a great place to live. And it's all thanks to people like Marika and Lee and the Tenants Association that became the Shefford Heritage Housing Cooperative.
What I appreciate about this documentary is how clearly it holds 2 truths at once. Home is deeply personal and housing is deeply structural. Harris is telling a story that feels intimate and local, but it all gestures outward to bigger questions about affordability, displacement, and what it means for people who have real agency over where they live. And I think the strongest moments are the ones that don't romanticize community building. You hear the exhaustion, the disruptions, the years of reconstruction, the learning curve of cooperative living. It's a reminder that community isn't something you have. It's something you maintain together over time. Even the small details, the memory of holes in the floors, the humor in the chaos, makes the resilience feel real rather than symbolic. It's also such a specific portrait of Centertown, a neighborhood where history, precarity, and development sit right next to each other, and where the meaning of home is constantly being negotiated. And that brings us to our second documentary, which shifts the focus away from the downtown core and into rural Ottawa, where the promise of a slower pace comes with its own set of pressures. Up next is Dunrobin Dreams, The Reality of Rural Retirement by Rosemarie Robillard. Take it away, Rosemarie.
Dunrobin Dreams, The Reality of Rural Retirement follows Julia Robillard, a retiree who left the city life behind for a quieter pace just outside Ottawa. But that quiet comes with spring floods, water issues, and rising costs. I'm Rosemarie Robillard, and in this audio documentary, I explore the hidden challenges of rural retirement and the support systems that don't always reach as far as they should. Just 50 minutes northwest of Ottawa's bustling downtown lies Dunrobin, a surreal rural community offering expansive landscapes and a tranquil lifestyle. For many retirees, it's an embodiment of the dream. But beneath this idyllic facade, challenges emerge that test the resilience of its residents. Welcome to Dunrobin Dreams, the reality of rural retirement.
We retired, we sold our business, and we moved out of Stittsville. Stittsville was getting too big for us, and we were ready to have a slower pace. We had big life changes, and the country seemed like a really nice option. When we first came down, it was October. And when we came down the hill on it was Thomas Dolan Road, all the trees, all the maple trees were in full bloom, and it was a beautiful fall. Everything was reds and bright yellows, and it doesn't happen like that all the time. And driving down our road on Barlow, people were walking their dogs. Everyone was waving to us as we were coming down. It seemed almost like that I was meant to be. It was just really beautiful and serene. And at that part of my life, I just kind of gelled and thought I'd like this slow-paced life.
Julia and her partner were captivated by Dunrobin's charm. However, transitioning from city life to a rural setting brought unforeseen challenges.
We did move here in 2020, so we were in the throes of COVID. So there was all kinds of restrictions everywhere, but it did feel a little more comfortable here. We're in the country and we were able to walk the dog. We met our neighbors that way if they were out walking, but we didn't have any close kind of get to know you parties in the house. But then there was a lot of unexpected too, moving here. There's no general store. I mean, you don't have a Max Milk. You don't have multiple grocery stores. So, we had to learn to actually plan our meals, even though it was just, we're a smaller family now, but it was a lot that way. There was a little more organization to kind of get things that we were used to getting. Also, water. We're on a well here and we have a septic system. So even when we had to learn about different products to use. So we did become a little more environmentally cautious. The cleaning products we're using, we're trying to use a little more organic because it's going into our septic system, and that kind of leaches into our yard. So it's really important. So in Dunrobin, I mean, our house is old. It's from the 70s. So we had to put in a new septic system. So we had to dig up the yard, put in this. It's about the size of a pool. It's huge. And so we had to get everything set up. But there's a lot of these older houses that have an old system and they haven't upgraded them or maintained them. I have a friend who lives just down the road, and there was some serious flooding a couple years ago, and her well and septic system got kind of washed out or damaged, and she has E. coli in her water. So she has to keep getting it tested. Now she's got a new well dug, but she still has this bacteria in her water. It's so I mean, she has to boil her water or use bottled water. It's crazy, and this has been over a year after.
For many retirees on fixed incomes, a damaged septic system isn't just a hassle. It's unaffordable. Replacing one can cost up to $20,000. Some choose to risk it drinking water that may be contaminated. In rural communities like Dunrobin, public infrastructure just doesn't stretch far enough. Testing and repairs often fall on homeowners, even when flooding makes those systems fail more frequently.
In the springtime, when the snow melts and if it's a wet season, we're sandbagging, and the community is out trying to help pump out water that's in our driveways. I mean, we've had our whole basement flood. So there's a lot of these little things that you don't even think of that when you live in the city. The country is a little bit different life.
Addressing such issues can be financially daunting. The Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program provides grants for septic system repairs or replacements, covering up to 50% of costs to a maximum of $2,000. However, with total expenses often coming to $20,000 and sometimes more, many retirees find themselves bearing significant out-of-pocket costs. In the meantime, residents lean heavily on community bonds.
It has a more chill environment. And although our neighborhood, we're all kind of in retirement mode, most people are retired. We do have some young families here, but the pace of life is a little slower. It's kind. So when we walk past our neighbors, we stop and talk. So there's this beautiful sense of community. And it's a sense of community that not everyone's in your business, but you're there. Like, I feel really comfortable if I'm by myself and there's a problem, I feel really comfortable walking over to the neighbors and knocking on the door.
Energy needs present another challenge. Dunrobin relies heavily on propane, a costly and less environmentally friendly option. Transitioning to electric alternatives is complicated by frequent power outages and the high costs associated with upgrading systems.
We're not on natural gas, so we have to use propane. So we have to use a dirty source of fuel. And of course, in today's climate, all we're hearing about is how horrible propane is. And I don't have a choice. I'd have to set up the whole house for electric, which I guess we could do. But what happens out here is we lose power often. So, anyways, all of the houses on the street are geared up for propane. So we're using dirty gas, and it's extremely expensive. That wasn't a cost we were anticipating.
Despite Canada's climate goals, rural areas like Dunrobin are still heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Not because they want to be, but because the infrastructure for alternatives isn't there. And for older adults living on retirement income, rising propane prices aren't just inconvenient, they're unsustainable. Retirement should be about rest, not resilience. And yet, in communities like Dunrobin, the burden of infrastructure, safety, and survival often falls on individuals, not institutions. If we want rural living to be truly accessible, we need to ask not just what draws people here, but what keeps them safe, healthy, and supported once they arrive.
I think you look at it as a simple life, and you're coming here to just sink into this easy, carefree life. And the reality is it's not. And maybe that's no life. I mean, there's a duality in your mind. You have these values and you have these ideas of what's happening. But no, living out in the country has a lot of work.
Retirement in the countryside offers undeniable allure, but it's accompanied by the challenges that demand attention from both the community and municipal leaders. Thank you for joining us on Dunrobin Dreams, the reality of rural retirement.
What stood out to me in this piece is how carefully it complicates the rural retirement dream. There's real beauty in what Julie describes: the landscape, the calm, the neighborlessness, the sense of space. But the documentary makes clear that rural living also comes with risks and responsibilities that are easy to underestimate until you're living them. And what's especially important here is that the challenges aren't framed as individual problems. Flooding, contaminated water, septic failures, expensive energy, frequent outages. These are infrastructure realities. When support systems don't extend far enough, that burden lands on residents, and for retirees on fixed incomes, it can be genuinely destabilizing. There's also a line in this documentary that really stays with you, the idea that retirement should be about rest and not resilience. That's what this piece ultimately asks us to consider, not just why people move to rural places, but what it would mean to ensure they're actually supported once they're there. Alright, that brings us to the end of today's episode, and the final part of our 2025 retrospective series. Thank you for listening, and a sincere thank you to Harris Blake Widdicombe and Rosemarie Robillard for sharing their work. If you'd like to revisit either documentary or explore more student work from 2025, you can find it all on our website and wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, this has been The Place of Sound.